Second in the division was the Seattle Seahawks. They had the same record at 10-7. Rams had the tiebreaker. A bit of a disappointing finish for the Seahawks. Geno Smith back as the starter, but I think we're all going to start here. Like news-wise, as far as Seattle goes, I mentioned before the season last year, it felt like a year where Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to start phasing Tyler Lockett out. I think Lockett's probably gone. I think we're looking at JSN and DK Metcalf as the 1 and 2 there for Geno Smith. There have been some DK Metcalf trade rumors. I'm not necessarily buying those. I'd hold on to him. But then the big question is going to be the offensive line once again in Seattle, particularly on the interior.
Yeah, I mean, that was the story heading into last offseason, heading into the offseason, even post, like going into the draft and then post-draft as well. It's been the weakness on paper of this team for like upwards of a solid year now. And it was through the season as well. It became a problem. And I think you saw it was a problem anyway, but the second you saw Geno Smith go down and you put somebody else in that unit, you saw just how bad the situation really was. Like I think Geno's reputation gets enhanced the second you put a guy like Sam Howell out there and you're like, wow, that offensive line, particularly the interior, it's actually worse than we thought it was. We already thought it was bad, but you put Sam Howell out there, you're like, this is like a farce. It doesn't function. So again, they're in a tough spot because this is part of the John Schneider ethos, right? They don't invest heavily in those interior spots, which I don't think is necessarily an incorrect philosophy, but it does mean that it kind of gets tricky then if you've got a real weakness there, because the easy way of attacking that is like first round draft pick, we plug in a guy with real pedigree to fix this. If you're not going to do that, you now need to hit on, these lower round guys, or they need to actually start paying off. And when you came out of last year's draft, you're like, okay, I actually, like, I applaud what they did, right? They said, no, definitely, we're not going to draft the Jackson Powers Johnson in the first round. We're going to wait. We're going to have the discipline. They come out of the draft with a guy like Christian Haynes. You're like, that's amazing value where they got him, but he didn't play well as a rookie. So somebody needs to actually start playing well with this strategy. Otherwise, it's just, you've got a problem spot on the offensive line you're refusing to fix.
I was a big Haynes fan coming out, especially in the third round. He did struggle as a rookie. The one thing I'll say, though, new system, Klint Kubiak coming in, you got the Shanahan, Kubiak, outside zone type of system. That is a fit for Haynes. So I do think he's got a shot there. So as much as like on paper, could they use it? They have an open spot at left guard. Laken Tomlinson's a free agent. Olu Oluwatimi at center was fine last year, but like, could you use an upgrade? Absolutely. And then right guard was a massive issue. And then when Haynes came in, things weren't great. I could see Haynes being a fit, but right. If it's not one of those, like he just gets in the building and it just doesn't work, right? He's overpowered, and it could work though here. The other, system wise, the other question's Abe Lucas as well, who had such a good rookie season a couple years ago. He's heading into the last year of his rookie contract, and he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries, right? So it's not just the interior. They got to kind of future-proof probably right tackle as well. The only solidified spot is Charles Cross at left tackle. So I think it's fair game at all four spots for Seattle to make improvements, not just performance, but also with the new system coming in.
And Lucas has been kind of riding the reputation of his rookie season the whole way. Like, I'm not sure he's actually really backed that up since. He looked really good as a rookie, and he's suddenly like, wow, the Seahawks hit on 2 tackles in the one draft, right? They bookended left and right with the first round draft pick, a guy with, legit top 10 pedigree, et cetera. And then Abe Lucas in the third round was that they got him. And then he's been hurt, and even when he's been back playing, it's like he's been okay. He's been certainly, solid, a degree. Like, you're okay. You're comfortable with him being your starter if the interior is good. But it's not like he's kicked on from that rookie season and sort of really grown the way Charles Cross has and developed into like a really top-tier tackle. It's like his best football was still right out of the gate, and even that was sort of adjusted for expectation a little bit. You're right. Like, I think he's definitely a question mark at right tackle. It's just that it's a smaller question mark than the interior, which is like, that's a problem.
So look, I think this is another one of those spots. They have to address something in free agency. I don't think they're going to necessarily go and get a Trey Smith and be the team that breaks the bank for him. There's still they're in negative cap space at the moment, which again, all that stuff gets reset by the league year, but they're not the most flexible team from a cap perspective. So I don't know if it's a Trey Smith thing, but I think they're another second wave of free agency type of team. If they do want to upgrade center, whereas a Drew Dahlman, potentially being out there, I think they should dabble in that, $8 to $12 million free agency range.
Yeah, Dahlman makes a ton of sense. I was going to mention him. He, I think, would also be a fit for that scheme, the Shanahan offensive scheme, and a guy that has already shown capable football. I think potentially can look even better than that in the Shanahan system. Now, that itself is a little bit up in the air, right? After last season, previously, the Shanahan system or systems, that family tree of offenses had boosted or masked offensive line problems. Last season, that stopped happening. So is that a new reality, or was that just a weird year where all three of the closest Shanahan derivative offenses struggled in the same capacity? So that, I think, is an open question heading into this year. Previously, we would have assumed that a Shanahan scheme coming in would immediately boost the production or hide the deficiencies of offensive linemen across the board. I don't know if that's true anymore.
Walt actually has a good suggestion finally.
Wow.
Not so much the round one suggestion here, but Gray Zabel, right? The guy that was hyped up so much out of North Dakota State and the ability to play center, play guard. Seahawks are picking at 18. I don't love him at 18, but if you trade down, maybe if you could trade down maybe into like the late first or early second, they have pick 18 and pick 50, but somewhere in that 28 to 40 range, I think would be good value for Zabel and two position versatility. I kind of like that as a potential option there, but I think you go second wave of free agency, have to address and add some more depth in the draft as well.
I mean, I do wonder how high a guy like Gray Zabel will end up going. I mean, he's gone from, a day two guy already to now we're seeing him pop up at the bottom of first round mock drafts. Like, it's not that big a leap to go from appearing, in the late 20s, the early 30s to 18. Now, what it does do is, then you start to run aground of the John Schneider. They don't want to draft interior offensive linemen there. So if they take him at 18, are they seeing him as a right tackle? Blah, blah, blah. So it might not necessarily be the best fit in the world for the way the Seahawks do things. But, I mean, Gray Zabel, I have no doubt whatsoever, would come in and improve one spot on this offensive line.
Yeah. Right. So you get into the philosophy thing, but I think that'd be an interesting move. They're another team I think that could use the big-bodied defensive tackle, right? They drafted Byron Murphy last year. He played a lot of nose tackle at Texas. Don't want him playing nose tackle at the NFL level. Want him playing over guards more. They had Jonathan Hankins, Jaron Reed last year. They're both out. I think they're another team with the big boys, the Kenneth Grants of the world, right? Those guys are all in play to complement Byron Murphy. I don't see them going defensive tackle back-to-back years necessarily in the first, but I think maybe later in the draft. Just something to keep an eye on there. I know you wanted to talk tight end maybe for the Seahawks here, and I have a suggestion. Taysom Hill. Remember when the Saints were the best team in the NFL last year? Do you remember that?
In week 2?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
2 weeks into the season. And when without Taysom Hill, they're a 45-point per game team. Without Taysom Hill, once he gets injured, you got some issues. Klint Kubiak unlocked Taysom Hill like no one else in history. Sean Payton couldn't do it. No one could do it. Klint Kubiak, get Taysom Hill in here to go with DK, JSN, and Kenneth Walker. After poo-pooing the Taysom Hill experiment for about 7 years, Sam, it only took me till he's almost 40 years old to just be on the Taysom Hill bandwagon, get him in here.
Okay. I'm still not convinced Taysom Hill is a tight end, as much as just a power running back. And
he's the running back compliment to Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. It's going to be great.
All right. I mean, I would give you, so they're picking, as you said, 18 in this draft. That's prime real estate for a guy like Colston Loveland, the Michigan tight end. If we assume that, the top tight end of this draft, whose name is escaping me right now.
Tyler Warren, but I don't know.
There we go. Yeah. If we assume Tyler Warren is gone by 18, I mean, yeah, Tyler Warren, if he falls to 18, perfect. If Tyler Warren is gone before 18, which it sounds very likely, Colston Loveland is the next guy up and a guy that's getting a ton of first-round buzz himself. That would make sense for them.
Now, Tyler Warren is the next Taysom Hill. So you get Taysom Hill and Tyler Warren, right? He's a left-handed Taysom Hill. I think that's beautiful.
Left-handed Taysom Hill.
I think they're definitely, I mean, look, Schneider's been good with the positional value thing. That draft a couple years ago when they had 2 firsts and they got Devin Witherspoon and JSN, and they got JSN at a time when they had one of the better 1-2 punches in the NFL. Love that, right? So they go positional value. It's going to be tough to say tight end at 18, guard at 18, but that is where some of the needs are. So we'll see how that plays out for Seattle. But I don't hate those picks potentially.
But like this is the potential issue with like a rigid adherence to the positional value mantra when it comes to drafting. Like, yeah, theoretically that's absolutely, I think, the way that both of us would want to draft. But at some point, if that's the weakness, that's the weakness, right? And you run out of ways to fix it. So you end up like, well, do we like rigidly say we don't draft this position and we need to target something else, even though you really don't need that position, and like persist with a gaping sore on the roster? Or do you say, like, we swung and missed at this a few times now, the way to fix it is this first round draft pick at number 18 overall that we don't that doesn't sort of fit the book, right? But it's the fix, like it's the patch for the sore that we have on this roster. Like at some point, I would say, look, I liked what you did last year. It didn't work. So if that's still the problem this year, like if they go through free agency and we're heading into this draft and it's still a massive problem on the interior of that offensive line, do you say, and there's a really good offensive lineman sitting there at 18 that's like, the top guard on the board, are you still saying, nah, position value, you can't take him there, you got to wait until the 3rd round and draft some guy we don't really love? Like, just take him. I understand it's not optimal, but it's like the position you put yourself in.
Then it's maybe a Tyler Booker is in play. I mean, every time we mocked for Seattle last year, we said JPJ we would take there. And by the way, if JPJ, the way he played as a rookie with the Raiders, if he was the 18th or 20th pick last year, you'd say that's fine. You're gonna a good guard who could be really good, right? So I don't think that's crazy. I like a couple of the suggestions in the chat. Drake Holiday says Elijah Arroyo closer to round 3 if he's available. Would love that. The athleticism that he showed at the Senior Bowl and at Miami. And Walt does have something. Walt actually did come up with something else pretty good that I've thought about that I would do if I was another team, trading for Michael Mayer of the Raiders. I think there's a buy low opportunity for the Raiders to go get Michael Mayer. They already have Brock Bowers, but it's a new coach, new system, new everything. Mayer's been a little underwhelming 2 years in, but we know the tight ends often take till years 3, 4, and 5. I would love a buy low. That'd be one of my suggestions for a lot of tight end needy teams around the NFL right now.
In a similar vein, I would certainly throw a phone call towards Green Bay and find out if Luke Musgrave is someone they'd consider moving on from. Like that was the first of the tight ends they drafted that year. Tucker Kraft has definitely jumped him. Musgrave has dealt with injury issues, and it just hasn't been a factor for them yet. But I wonder if Green Bay would be willing to listen to offers for Musgrave, and if you can get him healthy and unlocked, you've got this dynamic move tight end who's just had a rough start to his career.
The one more thing, or a couple more things we need to talk about. Tyler Lockett, pretty much out the door. I would see them moving on from him. JSN was so good during the second half of the season. So still love that 1-2 punch at receiver for the Seahawks. You still have Jake Bobo there. I think is a pretty good receiver 3, but you can still add some depth, maybe some speed, just a pure speed type of option there. Kubiak was Rashid Shaheed. He was getting him open. Valdez Scantling, if they had a nice speed option there, I think that would be great. And then defensively, Mike McDonald's first year as defensive coordinator, it did feel like the defense got better once they traded for Ernest Jones, even though it happened mid-season. He's a free agent, and I think they probably want to bring him back, I would say. And not a whole lot of other needs on the defensive side of the ball other than big body defensive tackle, and then I would say bring Ernest Jones back at linebacker.
And if you're wide receiver in free agency, I would kick the tires on somebody like Darius Slayton, who was sort of one of these players that's kind of emblematic of like a bad receiving core. Like, man, Darius Slayton's a much bigger part of this offense than we're comfortable with. But that doesn't mean he's not a good player. It's just like he can't lead the line in a terrible offense. Like, if you have an offense with Geno Smith and a powerful 1-2 punch at running back and JSN and DK Metcalf, and suddenly Darius Slayton is number 3 and a vertical threat, that I think is a really nice like melding of skill set plus situation.
So Darius Slayton, bring back Ernest Jones, draft the best player, guard, tight end in round 1, perhaps, or you get the guard and you get Arroyo on the turn. I think we're getting there.
So I mean, if we're taking over, right? If John goes on vacation for a couple of months and we take over the Seahawks, and this is what we're doing,
I'll talk to him next week. See if they'll hand over the reins.
I love the instruction manual that you've left us, right? I love this position value thing. I think it's smart. However, in the current situation, the best thing we can do is take the suboptimal by the book thing and just draft the player that fits our biggest hole. And even if it's in the first round and we don't love drafting guards there, like if I'm taking the best guard or the best tight end, like the guy that fills the problem spot. And I'm a little bit annoyed that I had to do that, but that's where I am.
Fixed. Seahawks fixed. They're getting over the hump next year after we fixed them this offseason.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.